Aria and the Magical Coral Reef. Once upon a time, in a magical coral reef deep in the ocean around Australia, lived a pretty mermaid named Aria. She loved to swim around and discover all the colourful fish and sea creatures that lived in the reef. Every day, she would swim around the reef and check on the different types of coral and the fish that lived there. She would make sure that the reef was always safe and healthy. She had a special underwater cave where she lived, and every night she would dream of all the new adventures she would have the next day. Aria was the protector of the coral reef, and she loved it very much. One morning, Aria woke up and was ready for a new day of adventure in the coral reef. She swam around the reef and said hello to all her fish friends. But as she swam, she noticed that the water was cloudy and the coral looked different. She went to her fish friends and asked them what was happening.
They told her that some mean people called divers were coming and breaking pieces of coral off the reef and taking it home with them.
Aria was very sad and worried. She knew that the coral reef was a special place, and it was hurting the fish and sea creatures when the divers broke off pieces of coral. So she made a plan to go talk to the divers and ask them to stop breaking the coral because it was not nice and it was hurting her home and friends. Aria headed towards the surface of the ocean, determined to talk to the divers and ask them to stop breaking the coral. As she approached the surface, she saw a boat with the divers on it. She swam up to them and introduced herself as the protector of the coral reef. Aria explained to the divers how their actions of breaking the coral was harmful to the reef and the sea creatures that call it home. She showed them the broken coral and the damage that it had caused. At first, the divers didn't understand and tried to defend their actions, but Aria remained persistent and continued to explain the importance of protecting the reef. Eventually, the divers began to see the harm they had caused, and they felt guilty. They apologized to Aria and agreed to stop breaking the coral, and also to help her with her mission of restoring the reef. They took Aria to the surface, and she showed them the different types of coral that they should plant and how they should do it correctly. Aria, the divers and her friends, the fish, worked together to restore the reef. Aria was happy and grateful to the divers for their help. Aria's determination to protect the reef is the key to her success in getting the divers to understand the importance of protecting it. It shows the power of kindness and persuasion and the importance of teamwork to achieve a common goal. Aria and the divers continued to work hard, planting and cleaning, determined to restore the reef to its former glory. As they worked, the fish and other sea creatures started to return to the reef, attracted by the new coral growth. Aria and the divers were happy to see that their efforts were already making a positive impact on the reef. As days came and went, the reef started to come back to life. The water became clearer and the coral more vibrant. Aria and the divers were happy to see the progress they have made, and they were proud of their hard work. With the reef fully restored, Aria and the divers had successfully brought the reef back to life, and all the sea creatures were now able to call it home again. Aria is grateful to the divers for their help, and they all planned to celebrate their success together. All the coral was healthy, and the sea creatures were thriving. Aria was so happy to see her home back to normal, and she thanked the divers for their help. It was a beautiful sight to see the fish swimming among the coral and all the sea creatures finding a home once again. Hard work and dedication goes into restoring a coral reef and the positive impact it can have on the ecosystem and the sea creatures that call it home. After all the hard work of restoring the coral reef, Aria and the divers decided to have a big celebration. They invited all the sea creatures to join in on the fun. There were clownfish, starfish, crabs, and all sorts of fish dancing and having a great time. Aria and the divers also decided to build a big castle made of coral, where they could keep an eye on the reef and make sure it was always safe and healthy.
They worked together to build the castle, and when it was finished, it was the most beautiful castle in the whole reef.
Aria was so happy with how the reef looked now, and how all the sea creatures were able to call it home once again. She knew that she had to make sure the reef was always protected and safe for all of them. From that day on, Aria and the divers kept a close watch on the reef, and whenever they saw something wrong, they worked together to fix it. Aria and the divers, along with all the sea creatures, enjoyed the beauty of the restored reef and the sense of community and stewardship they had developed together. A few weeks later, Aria and the divers swam around the coral reef, checking on all the coral and the sea creatures. They were making sure that everything was still healthy and safe. As they were swimming, they came across a group of new fish that had just moved into the reef. Aria and the divers welcomed them and showed them around the reef. They explained how important it was to protect the reef and how to live in harmony with the other sea creatures. After the tour, the new fish were very happy to have found such a beautiful and safe place to live. They thanked Aria and the divers for showing them around and for all the hard work they had done to restore the reef. Aria and the divers, along with all the sea creatures, enjoying the beauty of the coral reef and being grateful for the efforts they made to protect it and make it a welcoming home for all. Preserving natural habitats, living in harmony and being good stewards of the environment is of tremendous importance. Coral reefs and oceans play a vital role in the Earth's ecosystem, providing a habitat for countless species of plants and animals, and helping to regulate the planet's climate. However, human activities such as pollution, overfishing, and climate change are putting these habitats at risk. Coral reefs are particularly vulnerable, with many facing threats such as coral bleaching caused by rising ocean temperatures and acidification due to rising levels of carbon dioxide in the water. To protect coral reefs and oceans, it's important to take steps to reduce human impact on these ecosystems. This can include things like reducing carbon emissions to slow down climate change, protecting coastal areas from development and pollution, and managing fisheries to ensure sustainable fishing practices. Conservation efforts, such as marine protected areas and restoring damaged coral reefs, can also help to protect these habitats and their inhabitants. Additionally, it's important for individuals to take responsibility for their own actions, such as reducing single-use plastics, choosing sustainable seafood, and being mindful of the impact of travel and tourism on marine environments. Another important way to help protect coral reefs is through education, raising awareness, and encouraging responsible use of oceans and reef. This can be done by having educational programs and campaigns to encourage responsible behaviors and practices, such as not polluting or not taking coral or other marine wildlife. Additionally, supporting conservation groups and organizations can also play a vital role in protecting coral reefs and the ocean. Overall, protecting coral reefs and oceans requires a comprehensive approach, involving the combined efforts of governments, communities, and individuals